Compliance Alliance Candid Conversations, and with me today is Brett Neller, the CEO of Lineleader. Hey, Brett.
Hey, Lynn, thanks for having me. I appreciate it. Excited to be here.
Wonderful. Well, the reason why I wanted you to come on as a guest for this conversation is you and I have something in common, which is we didn't grow up in childcare. We pretty much entered at about the same time, over the last 6, 8 years. And we come from an industry perspective. So I thought it would be great to hear a bit about your time in your career that really points to this concept of a culture of compliance. It's not a popular topic. So let's just dive in right there. I'd like to hear your background and how compliance was viewed in that world.
Yeah, happy to. I've been with Lineleader Childcare CRM for 6 years now. Prior to that, I started my career in the hospitality industry and worked for Marriott International for a number of years. And compliance is littered. It's a bad word, but littered throughout kind of every company I've ever worked for. And the ones that protect themselves or plan for the future, or we talk about looking not just to the corner, but around the corner. The companies I've worked with have done that really well. And I love bringing kind of aspects of that to the childcare space and talking to with folks like yourself. So the first company I was exposed to with that was with Marriott International Hospitality. You wouldn't think that's like compliance related, but in the background, while you're servicing customers and guests just like you're serving families, there's certain risk and compliance elements of like food and beverage management around payment methods and accounting aspects of the compliance space. There's security aspects to running a huge property and whatnot. So that was my first taste of it. And then after I worked for them for a while, I worked for Deloitte Consulting as a strategy and operations consultant, standing up a program management office in the government health system in the government, the DoD. And standing up a program management, PMO, is 100% risk management. It's all master schedules. It's establishing a risk review board, a risk charter. It's managing risk as you manage lots of dollars and move it through the life cycle of a project. And that's probably where I got my I'll call it MBA on risk management, was program management within the DoD, working for Deloitte Consulting. Following that, I had the opportunity to work for Chevron, and this is where like the highest risk from an industry perspective I ever was a part of. Oil and gas is a tough job. People work on the rig. Your KPIs are injuries, potentially fatalities. I was there during Deepwater Horizon or just after Deepwater Horizon when there was a big disaster in the Gulf of Mexico, and it was like that could have been prevented. And if there had been a better risk management and compliance framework deployed across the operational elements of Chevron, it could have very well have been prevented. So that was very heightened during my time there. And so I had a little bit of different aspects of risk management. Now in the technology space within childcare, it's a little bit different, but operators deal with it every day, with whether it's insurance related or, I'm a father. I have a 4 and a 3-year-old, or 4 and a 2, soon to be 5 and 3. And there's nothing more precious than your children, and you're giving and trusting them to the operators every day in hopes, and the expectation is it's a safe environment where there's compliance is at the forefront. And you're going to pick them up every day, happy, safe, and in a really good spot. So I'm excited to always bring the elements of my background, whether it's to this now into childcare, whether it's from a technology perspective, but also helping operators think through kind of risk management in general. It's something I'm near and dear to my heart, and something that I love. Not everybody likes to talk about the potentially the bad things that can happen, but if this happens, then the cause and effect associated with various risks. That's probably what I love to do the most, is understand what could happen if and it's generally bad things, right? It's generally bad things, but I love getting ahead of those things so they never happen. So mitigating those out the gate. So that's a little bit of my background and how I see and how I use it in today in the Line Leader by Childcare CRM kind of environment, but also helping operators think through anything that can happen and helping them from a technology perspective, stay in compliance and make their lives easier from a compliance perspective.
I love it. So much to unpack with that. And I think too, what we can lean into is the next part of this conversation is having a culture of compliance.
Mm-hmm.
You and I have talked about this off camera. We've talked about it in circles in the early education space where we talk about it's a badge of honor in just about every other industry. Compliance is not a dirty word. And I'm not saying it's a dirty word in early education, but it tends to lean toward the licensing citations, where in fact, when you look at hospitality, when you look at oil and gas, when you look at finance, healthcare, the compliance practices are something that you want to promote and proudly tell about. We call it the badge of honor, right? Or the good housekeeping stamp of approval for those that remember what that is, but it's a stamp, it's an approval. So that's our opportunity, I think, as an industry. Let's borrow from some of these other experiences where compliance is really embraced as a positive thing. So tell me, what do you think are some of the key elements of building that culture of compliance and accountability, realizing it's to prevent bad things from happening, but where does that start? What are some of the key elements that you think help with that?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a cliche to say, but it starts top down, right? So when we look at, and I'll frame this in the aspect of like Line Leader and how we approach it, because it applies to any operation out there. Everybody has a mission. Everybody has values. And if safety, compliance, whatever, however you want to frame it, is not part of your mission or your values, it's really hard to get buy-in throughout the organization, right? So we look at it as like a company. There's a company level of accountability associated with risk management that has to be inherent in your culture, right? And as a CEO of the company, we talk about all the time. Like it's hey, we have to make sure we're compliant. We have to make sure we're helping operators in space stay compliant and stay safe. As a parent, I'm holding, like it's nothing more important than being a parent than making sure that who I'm sending my children for care on a daily basis are compliant. So at a company level, we say there's got to be a company level of accountability. So if it's got to be in your mission, it's got to be in your vision, it's got to be part of your KPIs, right? From there, we're going to talk about the next level down is like team accountability. So at a team level, and that team could be, you could frame this as like a portfolio of centers. You could talk about an individual center. Your team has to know that what the mission is, what the value is, and then those have to be cascaded down into their goals and objectives. If it's not part of what you're measuring on a daily basis, then it's not going to be impactful across your organization. So we talk about company level accountability, team level accountability, and then there's the individual level accountability. So individual KPIs and goals. So team leaders are enforcing it and reminding it on a daily basis that this is important. This is part of our company mission. This is part of our company values. So the building of the culture of accountability takes place at all three levels from my perspective. It's not part of your DNA as a company. It's never going to be important at the individual level.
I like that. If it's not part of your DNA, it's really not going to materialize itself.
Yeah, 100%.
All aspects of the program. And I know last year's benchmark study, and there's another one that's coming out that you've been authoring and gathering lots and lots of data about. I believe there was a statistic from last year's study about the culture of accountability and the buy-in. Can you tell me about that?
Yeah, so we do a survey every year. We've been doing it for over a decade now. And we love the participation we get from the industry. We get multiple geos because we have a big part of our business in Australia, different perspectives there. But this is coming out in January. But the latest stat around accountability or culture of like compliance is 66% of the respondents rated organizational buy-in on compliance and risk management as highly important. So people understand the importance of it.
Yes.
It's like whether or not they're actioning that or how they're actually implementing it. They know it's important. They think, oh yeah, that's probably something I should focus on. But how do you, as an organization, work through the risk management framework associated with mitigating that risk or making sure you're compliant is a different story than just feeling like it's highly important. But it's definitely it's come up more and more over the past few years in the surveys and the benchmark surveys, the studies that we've done. So I would imagine when we're compiling the results right now, I'm pretty positive it'll pop up as another theme in the latest release coming in January.
And I think conversations like this are really important to have because we're starting to elevate the awareness about it. So compliance, but you said another key word that goes hand in hand with this, and that's risk management. So risk management isn't something we tend to think about in early childhood education. We don't, that's not typically language that we use. So can you give a couple of examples of risk management? And I'll chime in on that as well. You just got muted.
Yeah, so sorry about that. So from a risk management perspective, any organization can define a risk. It's important to define it properly, right? So it's again, it's a cause effect thing. So if something happens, then this happens. The first part of effectively managing risk is identifying the risk, right? So you detect it, you define and kind of document the risk. What could happen? You do analysis on it, you evaluate it, you understand the root cause around why that risk could happen, and then you get your list and you should be prioritizing those risks. So that's the first part of the risk management. Not all risks are weighted equally. Some have a higher probability of happening or a lower probability, and some have a higher negative impact if they were to materialize than others. So you got to prioritize those risks. And we do that internally. I think every organization as a best practice should do that. Then you go through and identify, how do I mitigate this? Like, how do I make sure this one doesn't happen? If it's gonna if you feel like it's gonna happen no matter what, how do you marginalize it as much as possible? And then do you assign owners to those mitigation plans? So if you're working through like a risk management framework, it's identify, prioritize, mitigation planning, owners, and then you have a response. So you make sure somebody is implementing those risk mitigation elements that you outlined. And then you report on a daily basis, or not a daily basis, but bi-weekly, some sort of regular cadence. We internally have what's called a risk review board. We assign risk officers across the organization. And every month we have, or every 3 weeks, we hold a risk review board meeting. And we review old risks that were previously identified. We give updates on the mitigation plans associated with the owners of those risks too. And then we always identify new risks because there's risks that pop up every single day that you need to be on top of or mindful of. And if you don't document them, you kind of lose sight of them. So the risk review board is a good way to hold folks accountable to the monitoring aspect of those risks. Right. So the risk management framework is a really good way to establishing risk management framework is a good way to approach kind of risk management. And it can be anything. It can be financial, it can be compliance, it could be anything that is going to have a negative impact to your business should be outlined, really thought through. And I think that's where sometimes folks don't like to think about it. Like there's you're a glass half empty type of person, or you don't like to talk about the bad things, but it's part of running like a really good control environment, right? It's okay to talk about things that could go bad. You should get comfortable talking about those things that go bad so that if they do happen, you don't have to think about it. You action it because you've already thought about it. You already have the mitigation plan. You already have an owner and you're just executing. And it's really important. I think every organization go through that, and it doesn't matter. Childcare is in the same boat. It can be done at the corporate level or even at the center level. You can establish some sort of practice around actively managing your risks.
Yes. Let's dispel a myth right now, which is Does this only apply to big organizations, multi-site organizations?
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. I think uh, it could be any organization of any size. It can be a single center, single site owner, director doing both jobs, right? That they are probably have potentially more risk because they don't have scale and they don't have the financial like security of like a thousand center organization. But it can be done. It can be done in teams even. Like you could have your food and safety kind of like risk management aspect of your business. So you could have insurance. You could have anything. So I think it's prudent for every organization
Yes,
to set up some sort of framework to manage the risks and compliance aspects of their business. And it doesn't have to be this big thing, right? It can
right.
be, you can incorporate it into your weekly staff meeting. You can incorporate it into your one-on-ones with your teachers and assistant directors. So it can take many forms. The important thing is you're talking about it, right? And that you're not surprised when something happens,
That's
so
right.
that you can then action it versus having to waste time and be more proactive versus reactive.
Well, and reactive is always more costly.
Yes, generally
Reactive is,
more.
oh, I can't think of any situation where it wouldn't be. And as we wrap up here, another key takeaway is we're not just looking at the corner, but we're looking around the corner. Like when I think about that visual of we're anticipating, and that's where being proactive really comes into it. I also want to accentuate the fact that this isn't just for large organizations. Again, you and I come from outside of childcare. This is a badge of honor when you can say these are the things we do to mitigate risk, limit liability, so that we have a safe, nurturing, flourishing environment for staff and for children. That's something that you can put on your website. And I say this with all due respect to early education websites, but when we look at it, we don't always talk under our health and safety. We might say health and safety, but we don't really unpack that in a way that says, wow, they're really on top of it. And that gives great reassurance. As you said, as a father, and I have children too, now grown, but when I'd used childcare in the past, when I'm pulling away from that building, I'm not thinking about the curriculum. I'm not thinking about how beautiful the building is. I'm thinking about my child being left in the care of somebody else. And so anything we can do to really reinforce the safety, the practices that you have in place, and it boils down to risk management, compliance, knowing who's accountable for it, identifying that individual, measuring it. And like you said, if it's not in the DNA, it's going to be something that catches us off guard. So I love the idea of just really leaning into this and being positive and realizing that this is a good thing when we talk about it. And it's part of our value proposition to our families.
Yeah. Make it part of your brand. It should be part of your brand. It's an undervalued part of your brand if you're doing it and not sharing it. And there's nothing more important than making sure that parents and families know that you're running a compliant organization. You've thought through what could potentially go wrong. That's meaningful. It moves the needle when you're choosing from one center versus another. And anything you can do to put those elements in place and share with families on the tour, I think is a winning formula for driving enrollment and retention.
Yes. And I just thought of this as we're talking, but I think it's important to bring up when we have strong compliance and risk management practices in place, whether you're selling today or you're growing, having those in place to be replicated and or to be part of your story of your valuation. I mean, there are bonus payments against this investment of compliance practices. Anything you want to say about that?
Around bonus payments or just what specific?
Just the value of having the compliance practices in place when you're preparing to sell or even if it's a legacy succession plan, what's your thought about that?
Yeah, it's like if you're looking to sell your business, or you're looking to, get some sort of growth lever associated. If you have the practices in place, and you can demonstrate and show that you're not just talking about it, you're actually executing it. It makes your investment feel your business is more valued, right? They know that you have buttoned everything up, that you've thought through and planned for what could potentially hurt your business, and any foresight you can provide to those looking to get involved in your business is gonna pay dividends down the road. It's like doing preventative maintenance a little bit on your business, right? If you can do preventative maintenance, you're not going to be surprised down the road. You're going to be fiscally probably in a better spot. And it's just it's a characteristic of a great organization to have that as like a badge of honor, like you're talking about.
Well, Brett, we'll leave it there. I am looking forward to you coming back where we can actually unpack this risk management framework and give our listeners an opportunity to push up their sleeves and actually go through that matrix and start building it out. But you've left me with a lot to think about. Our listeners, I'm sure, are also taking notes, and we look forward to having you back on a future session. Thanks for your thoughts.
Absolutely love to be here. It's such an important topic, and I'm happy to talk about it. So thank you for having me. Really appreciate it.